Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. I am wanting to share on an interesting topic that someone had basically mentioned to me about having a lot of painful memories, things that happened in their history that they just couldn't get out of their mind, they just couldn't get it out of their head. It kept plaguing them no matter what went on in their everyday life. Things would trigger those memories and they'd be reminded of old pain and those kinds of things. And I'd say that for anybody who's experienced loss and not necessarily processed them, it's something that happens all the time. Just living your everyday life, that car, if you see a particular car or a particular colored car, it reminds you of someone or reminds you of something that happened or reminds you of whatever else. So these everyday life happenings can trigger memories. By the grace of God, the mind is a very powerful tool, and it's a very good, strong tool. And so the way that memories work is that sometimes one thing happening will trigger something else. And that's great when you're trying to remember how to answer a homework problem in school or do a task at work. But that can be problematic when we have painful feelings, when we have painful things that have happened in our lives, painful experiences, and they keep getting triggered. So this person had asked, how can I forget? How can I move through them? And the good news is there is a way to do it, right? So there is relief. I don't even want to call it the bad news. It's just that the way that happens, the way that you're able to forget and move through painful experiences is by fully expressing the depths of those emotions, which is what's called processing the emotions, going through the grief cycle. So completely starting with the anger, continue on to sadness, grieving, crying, letting it all go, and then making transition and making peace with it. That's the basic process. Now, how do you do that? That's a story for dealing with on a different level. But that's the key to being able to not only forget the pain, but to be. And actually, what will happen is you're not going to forget the what happened. You're just going to be able to forget the pain associated with what happened. It's kind of like, there's you might notice that something bothers you personally, but it doesn't bother like your siblings or your parents or your family members, right? They don't get triggered by blue cars, for example, because they didn't have a relationship with that person who has a blue car, but maybe you do, right? So every time you see a blue car, it triggers something for you, and for everybody else, it doesn't, because they have no connection with that thing. Well, the same is true of our memories. Once we process our grief and we go through the grief cycle, those memories won't haunt us anymore. And when we experience them and when we remember those things, there won't be any pain because we've already dealt with it. So it's like I've been saying quite a bit, pay now or pay later, either way you pay. At least for me, what ended up being most beneficial for me was to pay now. So go through the work of feeling the emotions, grieving the losses, experiencing the pain. Like, it's not pain-free, right? But it is endurable, and you will survive. I survived, right? I got through it. And then after that, there's no more pain. So, I dealt with the medicine, if you will, and now there's no more pain. So I can be reminded of different things that happen, different painful experiences, different losses, different whatever, and it doesn't hurt anymore. So I'm not able to control the universe so that I don't experience blue cars anymore. That's not within my power. But what I can do is heal the pain so that even if I do see a blue car, even if I am reminded of a pain from my history and I remember that memory so vividly, it won't elicit the pain that it used to. And again, if you don't, then you pay later, right? So every time you see a blue, maybe you won't deal with it consciously, you won't deal with it mindfully, the pain of the blue car or whatever the memory is. But if you end up, every time you see a blue car, that nagging pain will come back. And it may overwhelm you, and it may completely come out of nowhere. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, Omar, it's hard for me to listen to the radio because every now and then it'll play a song that reminds me of, something that happened 5 or 10 years ago. And whenever that happens and I'm driving, I break down. Like, I can't function anymore. I'm like, well, You know, that can be a very debilitating situation. Can you imagine a single song played on the radio brings back like sort of an avalanche of emotions and it just overwhelms you completely because you've got something connected to that song. You've got something connected to that experience. You can't control when somebody plays that song or does something in the world, right? You can avoid it to the best of your ability, but at some point something's going to happen. The way to be free of that and to be able to, again, not forget but not feel pain when you remember is to grieve. So that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about talking about, and the healing process that comes from experiencing emotions. And I hope that this has been helpful. So I hope to talk to you again soon. Wa alaikum assalam. Peace be upon you.